Good morning, y'all. Happy Tuesday. Get up and get into this Real Housewives of Orange County episode with me. Orange County is back, y'all. We are on season 19. Y'all, there has been 19 seasons of Housewives. And I know we've had our ebbs and flows, and we feel like we can point out and spot plots and storylines and all of that. And we know gone are the days of yesteryear with Housewives. Some of these franchises I'm still enjoying. And I have to admit, the last couple seasons of OC have been one of them. Now, I'm going to go into this saying, I'm not going to say I told you so, but what I'm going to say is I felt the way I was not a big fan of Katie last season, especially learning about her online shenanigans with calling the police on someone and trying to change the story about someone chasing her, following her home, only to find out that it was him, that it was her that followed him home and he was falsely arrested. And there is a judgment in his favor out there about it, right? Different things like that. And I'm not saying that we don't know her, right? However, there is something to that. Um, and it seems like the ladies feel the same. Now, I don't think it's kind of nuanced, not really nuanced, but I don't think Katie's necessarily all the way in the wrong. And I don't think the ladies are all the way right. There's points to be made on both sides, but child, we bringing kids into it, into all this stuff is just crazy. But let's go ahead and get into season 19, episode one of the Real Housewives of OC Revolving Doors. So when the episode opens up, there's a season overview. It starts out with all the ladies, they got to be dramatical and they're in there taking the lie detector tests and someone's lying. Will she ever stop lying? Is she lying? I can't do this, all the dramatics. Then we jump right into what I like to call y'all know, interstitial. So Shannon and Archie split screen with Tamara and Eddie and their dogs. Gina is listening. Gina's at her listing with Travis. Her and Travis are realtors together. The listing is in Mission Viejo. Emily and Shane and their family are skating together. Child, I guess Shane's still trying to tap. Emily's behind. Listen, if he like it, good for him. He does seem to really like her behind. So you want that in a marriage. Just your partner to still want you behind. And vice versa after all those years, right? Heather and Terry are at their LA penthouse. Terry is pointing out his abs. Heather said, I would do you. And Ryan and Jen are doing face masks. All right, now let's really get into the episode. So Shannon is picking up Katie. They catch up on each other's lives because let's not act like all of them are friends. Some of them are hanging out with the off season, but not all of them. Also, Heather Dubrow said something a couple years ago, and it made sense in terms of being friends with the women, and then coming back filming, and we're like they haven't seen each other, they can't really be friends. She said when you're constantly filming and seeing people, even your friends, every day for 3 and 4 months, sometimes you want to break from everybody. So when you're not filming, you may go 2 months, you may go on vacation or go away or just to kind of decompress a little bit and may not be hanging out like that because you want a bit of a break. And I was like, you know what? That makes sense. So the update, Katie just got back from Arizona. Matt was hosting a golf party. Shannon asked if there were a lot of single men there, and Katie said there were a sea of penises, and all I could think of was child from sea to shining sea. Shannon says her manifestations that she's done for 2025 do not include any men on her list. Now, in her confessional, she says when she looks back over her life a year ago, she was a completely different person. So remember, Alexis was on the show. We know why Alexis came on the show, to be John's mouthpiece, right? And she was really going through it. She says she doesn't think about John at all, and she did end up settling. Remember, John filed that $75,000 lawsuit against her. She settled it for 60,000. She said it was important for her not to have any ties with him anymore. And she says, "Enjoy the wedding that I paid for because he's marrying Alexis." Now she says she don't think about John, But as her and Katie were driving, did y'all catch? She was like, "That's the night where John and I met," or "That's where," or something like that. She references him. So Shannon has invited everybody to the Golden Doors. Is it a not? Is it a? Do they consider it a spa or a retreat? I just called the name Golden Door, but I wasn't sure if they said it was a spa or retreat. Anyway, she said she never thought they would tell her to bring friends for the day. So a week earlier, she was on the phone with Kathy, who is the CEO, and she won like a boxing blaster. Was that at the Golden Door? Because I was a little confused about that. But anyway, so Shannon takes Katie to the BMW car dealership. Katie says she's looking for a 7 Series. So, of course, she's looking at the different cars. And while they're there, Katie says in her confessional that her and Shannon really have a blast together after last year's reunion. She felt like they got closer. And they show a picture of Shannon, Jen, who we know Katie had got close with, and Katie. Um, she said she felt like that was a real turning point for them in their friendship. So in the scene, Shannon is telling her, "Hey, look, so I talked to Emily." And then they show these shows lately have a lot of scenes that we don't see. We only see them in flashbacks. Y'all notice that these Housewives shows, there's a whole lot of scenes that are the full scene is almost, or the scene is shown in flashback. Like we don't even get a piece of the scene throughout the season. It's all these flashbacks. But anyway, there's a flashback to Emily and Shannon, and Emily has all this stuff on her stomach. She's getting some work done. Shannon says, "Hey, like, Katie, listen, girl, there's certain things that you don't go there with. You know, when you brought up her kids with your daughter," and Katie jumped right in and said, listen, what I thought Kylie said about she was babysitting Emily's kids, and Emily said that Heather was mean to their mom. They didn't like Heather. She said, I thought it was a nothing, but it turned into something big. I don't, I'm going to be so completely honest and so for real. I don't see how Katie thought that was going to be a nothing. You knew y'all were filming and said it on camera. Did you maybe not know that it was going to be shown? I don't know. But I imagine there's a lot of mothers out there, and y'all let me know what y'all think. And of course, we're not saying Kylie was talking bad about the kids, but you're in my house, and then you think it's funny to repeat something that my kids said that I said about another cast member. While it may not be the biggest of deals, it could kind of get murky. And it could trigger something to lead to something else, which is what happens, which we'll get into later. You say this about my kids, or my kids are brought into the situation. You're not talking about my kids, but they're brought into the situation. So then Emily goes and brings up a bigger situation with Katie and her kids. You know what I mean? And it just, so sometimes like it's that little thing that you thought was nothing turns into something huge, and it could have been just avoided had you not said it. I don't know. Y'all let me know what y'all think about it. Cause I don't even care for Emily like that. Never have since her first season. But I still was kind of like, girl, you really could have kept that between y'all. But anyway, Shannon said, I think it was after that. And then Emily's ex nanny came forward. And then they showed the headline from All About the Real Housewives. It said, exclusive Emily Simpson's former babysitter speaks out saying Emily's kids know everything and hated Heather Dubrow. Shannon says she's saying that you told the nanny where to put the information. Like, you may not have reached out to the nanny, but when she reached out to you, we feel like you should have shut it down. But you told the nanny, oh, nope, go over here. Katie said in her confessional that after the reunion, Emily's ex nanny reached out to her and basically said, Kylie's not lying. Because remember, again, Kylie said that Emily's twins said that Heather was mean to their mom, so they didn't like Heather. The ex babysitter is saying, and so Emily's saying that didn't happen. My kids didn't say that. I asked my kids didn't say that. The ex babysitter reaches out and says, you're not wrong. Basically, I even know that those kids don't like Heather. So Katie was saying, this is my experience. So, and it was validating because people were coming at her for her daughter saying that, for her because Katie actually encouraged her daughter to say it on TV. Remember, it was Tamara, her daughter, Katie and her daughter. And didn't Katie last season, Katie was like, tell them, and had her daughter tell them, right? So Katie is saying it was validating. And so she told the babysitter, look, there's nothing I can do with this. So she pointed the babysitter in the direction of a podcast that Katie's daughter did. because Katie's daughter did a podcast after all of it came out. Kylie saying, Emily's son said this. She goes and does a podcast and talks about it. So when Emily's ex babysitter reaches out to Katie, Katie says, "Oh, I'm not going to do anything with it, but take it to this podcaster." Katie said, "I had nothing to do with any of it going out." I mean, well, let's be clear. You kind of did. You sent her in the direction. Shannon said, well, Emily's really upset about it. So now we're at Gina's new house, 2,800 square feet. Her and Travis made the decision to move in together. Remember last season, her storyline was them moving out. And they made it seem like it was for all these different reasons, but come to find out, it was basically the ex-wife. And I guess being jealous or doing little things to them, because she saw that Travis was happy with Gina. And I believe there was one time a rumor, or allegedly Travis's ex were putting out these lies about Travis or something. So she said there's a lot of homes in her neighborhood that size, again, 2,800 square feet, 5 bedrooms. She said last year it was easy to say we couldn't afford something bigger, but that wasn't the real issue. She said this is going to sound weird, but she took a trip to Bali over the summer and it was life-changing. She felt connected to the wind. There was a lot of signs. It made her realize that she was living in fear. So the fear of what Travis's ex might do was stopping her from fully moving forward in her life with Travis. And she decided she wasn't going to let that happen. So Travis is there, but she tells Travis Emily is coming over. Travis leaves. Emily comes because Emily hasn't seen the house. In her confessional, Emily said Gina has her head on straight about Travis. Look, she got one time to leave him. She leaves him again. She don't think Travis is coming back. So Gina tells Emily, because we know how this goes. We know the setup for the drama in the scenes, right? So Gina tells Emily that she went to the dog beach with Jen and Shannon. And Jen told Gina that Katie did tell the babysitter to reach out to the podcast. Gave her the information. Hey, reach out to the podcaster. Here's the information. Emily says Annabelle's friends all have Instagram and social media, and they tell her all the things that they've read about her. So in her confessional, Emily says she's never felt so violated. And I guess, you have this babysitter in your home, seen and heard things, and they see your family dynamic, and now you have them on a podcast. Now, I didn't listen to the podcast to know if she said anything crazy. Did y'all listen to it? I don't even remember when it came out. I remember when Kylie did Katie's daughter did the podcast episode. I didn't listen, but I heard some clips. But I don't even remember when the babysitter, did it go anywhere? Did y'all hear it? But she said, look, I get that Katie can't control that the nanny reached out to her. However, instead of basically telling her, girl, I can't do nothing with this and leaving it or ignoring it, she connected the nanny to the podcast host. Emily said the problem is other bloggers. So Katie connects the former babysitter to the podcast host. They also because they have a podcast and a blog, they post something on their blog. Then other bloggers pick it up and replicate it so that the general public is all commenting on her parenting and her children. So we're back at the dealership with Shannon and Katie. And Shannon is like, look, our kids don't go on podcasts, but you were okay with your daughter going on a podcast talking about Emily. Katie said, but Kylie was telling her truth. How do y'all feel about that? Do y'all feel like there really are rules to the Housewives game, or a code of conduct, or a code of something that the Housewives themselves have come up with each other, and that Katie broke this code by, number one, encouraging her daughter to say it on camera, and then also now doing podcasts? Or do you feel like if Kylie was there and it happened, she has every right to talk about it, because she's not talking about the kids, but she's talking about her experience with the kids? Y'all let me know what y'all think, because I kind of am like, I see what Emily's saying. Like, girl, really? Katie's like, it's my daughter's experience. I feel like I may have told my daughter, look, don't say anything. Here's the thing, though. Fast forwarding just for a bit, well, going back to fast forward, Emily was upset about that whole thing. So then at the reunion, she brings up Katie's custody. So is it like all gloves are off? I know I had started it by encouraging my daughter to say something. But now you're bringing up an even another issue. Is Katie right to be like, all bets are off? Yeah, I'm sending the babysitter there. Or is it, look, you threw that out about Emily's kids and what she said. You can't dictate Emily's response. So Emily came guns a blazing. The only thing I can say is that Emily and Katie had kind of squashed it at that party at the end of last season. So then to bring it up at the reunion is like, I don't know. Y'all let me know what y'all think. So Katie is like, look, this is not apples to apples. You talked about my custody. That's something extremely painful. I lost physical custody of my kids. I chose to do that. And she says, saying those things about me being a mother was terrible. That's not okay. She hasn't apologized to me for that. Shannon says, but look, you need to talk to Emily. And Katie's like, I'm happy to. So we back with Gina and Emily. And Gina is like, I've had it with her. Remember last season, Gina felt like she got pulled into this rumor situation with Katie, talking about Heather calling the paparazzi, and Katie was saying that basically Gina told her off camera she wanted her to do it, and Gina's like, no, I just told her you need to have conversations on camera. So now Gina is saying she's at her max with her, but I need to talk to her about it. So she said, I need to get some of this off my chest. So I pretty much invited her to coffee. In her confessional, Gina said it upsets her because she brought Katie to the group and she feels responsible. She feels like if she meets with her, maybe she has a shot to Katie can course correct herself with the group of ladies. So she asked Emily, will you come? So Emily's like, I want to go, but I have mom things going on that are really hard. But now I got to take time out of my day to deal with this bish. So Gina said, I'm telling you right now, Katie has really pushed this too far. We're back. We're at Shannon's. She's on the phone with her daughter, I believe Stella. She's in Amsterdam. Child should get ready to go to a rave. She said it starts past my bedtime and it don't get done till when I'm getting ready to get up for work. So in her confessional, she said she misses her girls. Adeline and Sophie are in New York City. Stella is the one that wanted to stay close to home, but it's now ironic that she's living in Europe and is going to spend all 4 years there. She said, I'm trying to explain to her, child life ain't always going to be like this. At some point, you got to get a job. I knows the feeling. Moving on. I have a recent college grad, and then my youngest is going into her senior year of college. So I know. Heather and Terry are at their Beverly Hills home. She talks about her initially being nervous because her daughter Max was going to Paris for the semester, but she's doing so well. Stella, remember we just talked about Shannon's daughter is over there, and Max has communicated with her, so that probably makes her feel a little better. That house is a wreck because the contractor, they bought the house to do reconstruction on it. The contractor tore everything up and we could see it, the walls, everything, only then to bring her the plans for the house and be 8 million over budget. But he tore the house up first and I was like, is that normal for them to bring you the plans afterwards? Are we missing something? Did you have initial plans and then when he tore it up, did he uncover some other stuff? And that's the reason that there's an additional $8 million being spent. So Terry's like, it ain't even worth it anymore. Let's just sell it and move on. So she's like, well, wait a minute. We at least need to put the floors in. And Terry's like, those floors are going to be $45,000. What's the point in putting them in? And the first thing that they're going to do is rip them up. And Heather's like, that's just a small amount of money. And he's like, oh yeah, it's just that budget, that 45,000, you would use that to throw a party for no reason. But Heather also mentions how if they continue with the construction, it's going to take 3 years. By that time, Ace, their youngest, will be graduating high school. So Heather feels guilty, and Terry's like, no, there's no need to. We're at Emily's house. So Emily's twins are almost 10 years old. She says they're very tiny for their age, and they clearly took after Shane. Child, they look like Shane too, especially Luke. They really look like Shane. So Shane comes downstairs. They're trying to figure out something for Luke to eat. She said every night they give him a bowl of rice. But not as a single child, as a mom, she wants to give him variety, so it's hard. Shane said Luke doesn't complain, but they know that he's hungry, and that's really sad. So in her confessional, Emily said Luke had always been a picky eater, but it's gotten to the point over the last year, sometimes he just doesn't eat at all. 2 months ago, she took Luke to a therapist, and he has Narfid, which is or ARFID. Ar- yeah, ARFID, avoidance restrictive food intake disorder. So the nutritionist was saying to her that he doesn't understand that he feels hungry and that food in general disgusts him. Shane is like, we offer it to him, but we don't force him. So she said this, the therapist said that he's very susceptible to smells. And she was like, yeah, they'll go into somebody's house and he'll be like, it stinks in here. And I said, and I'm gonna be honest, that sounds like something if Emily was with Gina and they're going somewhere, they'd be shoving food in their purses, talking about how somebody's house stinks. I could just see that. But she said, so they realize though that they have to be more accommodating and lenient when it comes to him because he doesn't process the idea of eating like they do. And I had never heard of that. So I'm learning something new watching this. My heart goes out to Emily because I know and Shane, because I know as parents, you want the best for your kids, right? And to hear her say, I don't want that, but it's an actual disorder where food disgusts him, but he's starving. So my heart really, really went out to Emily and Shane. So she says, then she gets worried because him not eating gives him low energy and affects his mood. And I know as an adult, I've caught myself a couple of times, y'all, like barely felt like I was shuffling through the day, then realizing, Taria, you have not eaten enough nutrients today. And then feeling like, ooh, that feels good. So even as an adult, I don't always catch it at first. And I'm like, why am I so tired? Why am I so this? Ding, ding, ding. So I can imagine a child, a 10-year-old trying to process that. And she says he gets low energy, that affects his mood. But he can't make that connection. In her confessional, she said she worries about Luke and she'll offer him food and he'll say no, but he's starving. She doesn't know what to do. He won't eat anything, but he's starving. And she's worried that he won't get the nutrition he needs. And he is a 10-year-old growing boy. He needs all of us need the nutrition, so I know it's hard. She said, I'm worried that he's the weird kid at school who doesn't eat and everybody's going to make fun of him. And she wants him to be happy. And I get that we have all these thoughts and anxieties sometimes over our children, right? I'm not saying you have to be the most popular, but I don't want you to be the oddball out either and feeling teased and lonely. And so I'm sure she's going through all of these thoughts. So Shane reassures Emily and says, he has the capability to do it. Because Shane talks about there was like a burnt French fry or something. And she shows it to him and he's like, ill. And he was like, would you eat it for $20? And he popped it in his mouth and ate it, no problem, for the $20. So Shane reassures Emily that he has the capability to do it, to eat. He just got to overcome it. And it's in his mind. Like they've just got to figure out how to get him over that. So it was nice to see Shane reassuring. A lot of times he's joking around with her, but to see him reassure her in that moment, in a serious moment, like, listen, we'll get through it. He's going to get through it. You know, I'm sure that made her feel good. Child, next up, I need to stretch before I get into this. I need to stretch to make sure I'm not reaching because I really don't really see it for Tamara. So Tamara's going to therapy. She walks in, the therapist asks her, how is she? She says, unwell. And she grabs the box of tissues immediately. She immediately starts crying and says, I've been crying because of these past three. I've been crying for this since we met last week because they've been going through her history basically in the last 3 or 4 months that she's had therapy. They're talking about stuff that she has buried, and the doctor says, we're opening up a lot. In her confessional, she said, I realize you have to dig up things that are very deep inside because those are the things that come out when you're angry. She said the custody battle with her ex, with Simon, what he put her through, her daughter leaving her, and then Tamara's own dad not being there. It's all hard, and she never really wanted to do it. So she tells the therapist her sensory issues are heightened and her intrusive thoughts are out of control. The therapist says, we talked about you processing the trauma and whether or not the spectrum was a part of it. It's hard to say until you get an assessment. So Tamara says, when you mentioned it to me at that time, I had gone home and went on my podcast and I shouldn't have said anything. But then they showed the flashback to Tamara saying she went to the therapist and the therapist told her she was on the spectrum. And this is the thing that is like you relay the information wrong a lot, Tamara. Because we find out the therapist didn't say that. She needs, like, there might be a potential, but we need to do a full assessment. So Tamara says she got annihilated publicly, and they post some of the things that people were saying on social media. She says it's really hurtful. People think she doesn't have feelings, and it's not true. And she's tired of being thought of as a horrible human being because she's not. I know this is a show, but we're going by your actions on the show. It seems like not necessarily the narrative. It's you know how sometimes we feel like, wait, is there a certain narrative that these producers are trying to put out because they'll show a response of a housewife, but not what caused the response. So now you're thinking, oh, this housewife is X, Y, and Z because that's what they want you to think of this housewife. I don't know that I feel like they do that with Tamara. She on her own, whether she's making the show or not. The difference is with her, like Shannon last year, she feels like she was making a show, but you brought her alcoholism into it every chance you got. At what point is it like that's a serious thing? Well, not alcoholism. I take that back. They brought her drinking into it because I don't know. It's not for me to, but she kept bringing her drinking into it. So with Tamara, I don't feel like they're creating a narrative. I believe you're giving us things and we're painting the picture, with the paint that you've given us, whatever. So she says, and there is a small part of me, and I don't like to feel this way, but reality TV can make you like, I don't trust none of y'all, all y'all lying. But it makes me wonder, it makes me feel like this therapist is an actual storyline. And sometimes I hate to use the word storyline because it's supposed to be their real life, but we all know they want them to have something going on. But I do feel like everybody doesn't have to be at the height of something going on. I don't mind just seeing their lives, their real lives, and the little petty traumas. Everybody doesn't have to have something going on. But there's a part of me that feels like this therapy is for a story. Like this is her heavy story this year. I'm fixing myself. I'm healing myself. Sort of like her baptism season. But then there's a part of me that's like, well, even if it is, maybe she does need it and she'll gain something out of it, right? So she says she keeps a wall up so she doesn't get too close. She doesn't nurture her friendships. In her confessional, she says her biggest struggle is trusting people. I said, now, girl, let's remember that. She keeps a wall up. She doesn't get close to people, and it's difficult nurturing her friendships. Remember that. Child, we see Janet and Ryan. They are drunken in love, honey. I mean, not really drunk, but they're shopping in a beach store. Ryan wants Jen to get married in a bikini. They're getting married soon, so I wonder if we're going to see it on the show. He tries talking her out of dresses and suits and just said, what about we do board shorts and a bikini? And the store lady is like, oh, that's an idea. So Jen said her wearing a bikini is going to be the closest thing he's going to get to her getting married naked. Excuse me, y'all. So, oh, okay. She said her kids are really excited about the wedding, and they flash back to them all. Their kids are all around the table. They're all talking about the wedding. They're really excited. One of her, I think it was her, somebody's son, either hers or Ryan's, was 21 and was like, "You're gonna have the Malibu rum there," and they're laughing and joking, having a family moment. She said, "We envision ourselves on the beach in the sand, all their kids around them, exchanging their vows and some Malibu rum, of course." So Jen is telling Ryan, in the store when it comes to the friend group, she doesn't want Tamara at their wedding. And Ryan says, yes, I totally agree. Not in a spiteful or vindictive way. I just don't want her there. In her confessional, Jen said, I haven't talked to Tamara and I don't want to talk to her because she's caused pain. And she tried to hurt Ryan and I. And I never even thought about what Jen is getting ready to say. But Jen says, look, I was not in the best place with my ex, with her ex William going through the divorce. Some of the things that she said about Ryan could have made her ex say, hey, this is not a good environment for my kids to live in. I guess with the stuff about the FBI and all this stuff, and tried to fight her he could have tried to fight her for the kids. That could have put her in a really bad position. And that Tamara is really careless with her words. She says, how could I have been friends for so many years with this woman and now I'm a target? I said, because you're on the show and she's creating stories. Simple as that. Above all else, Tamara's job is number one to her. I believe it's her security, her how you feed your family, right? So number one, I know she's got Vina and all this other stuff, but again, this is the bread and butter, and it allows you the platform to do the podcast and this and all of that stuff. So in her confessional, Jen says Tamra really liked Ryan, and she would like lift up her top and be like, "Oh my God, what's it going to take for this guy to notice me?" She said one day she was at Ryan's house. Now I want to know what for. Was there a party going on? Why was Tamara at Ryan's house in the beginning? I mean, to begin with. She says that Tamara called her from Ryan's house and said, "I'm at Hot Gym Guy's house. Should I go upstairs and take one for the team?" Jen says now she's being like really nasty to Ryan. Why? Because he didn't pick you? I said, Jen tells Ryan that Tamara's talking about therapy and getting help for herself, and Ryan says, "Psst, it's all fake. She's not doing it for any personal retrospect because that baptism 10 years ago should have been personal retrospect." I said, well, dang. So Jen said, if a baptism can't save her, I don't know what a therapist is going to help you. Emily and Heather are at a restaurant. They greet each other. I don't know if they both had birthdays in the same month, but Heather brought a gift for Emily. It's monogrammed. In her confessional, Emily says, "I appreciate the gift. It's so thoughtful, but I'm surprised it doesn't have HD because we all know Heather loves a monogram." So she says, they talk a little bit, and Emily's like, "How are the kids?" And Heather's like, "Max has had anxiety for years. 6 years ago, never would she have thought that here Max would be doing this study abroad." So then Tamara shows up. So Emily tells Tamara her face looks good, and Heather says, "Yeah, you're super skinny though." Tamara said it's because she's stressed. She thinks it's due to the process of her going through therapy. It's been 4 months. So Heather says, "Well, how do you feel about it?" So Tamara said, "I feel like I'm getting very soft." In her confessional, Heather says, "I'm proud of her for going to therapy. A softer Tamara is good for everybody." Tamara then brings up Katie. So now this is the second person. Well, Shannon brought up Emily's issue with Katie to Katie at the BMW dealer. Emily went over to Gina's house and Gina brought up Katie. Now Tamara is bringing up Katie. And at first, when she initially said I had dinner with Katie, I thought she was bringing it up because she knew Emily had an issue, not because now Tamara has her own issue with Katie. So she said, "I went to dinner with Katie to the Quiet Woman," and Emily says, Tamara says she wanted to go to the Quiet Woman. Emily says, of course she wanted to go to the Quiet Woman. And I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if that's because the Quiet Woman has popular on the show, Shannon talking about it, and now Katie's a part of the show. You know what I mean? Did she want to be seen or what have you? Heather said, "Does anything ever good happen at the Quiet Woman?" So Tamara said, "I hadn't talked to Katie in a while. So when we're at dinner, Katie's like, 'Why did you block me?' And Tamara's like, 'You don't know why I blocked you?'" And now when Tamara mentioned this story, I remember when this story came out. There was a content creator that was putting stories out that Tamara ran all these troll accounts. So she went on Instagram. Tamara went on Instagram, denied it, threatened the account, saying, you'll be hearing from my attorney. This is defamation. I don't have all these accounts. Don't run all these troll accounts. Tamara said Katie reached out to the girl and was consoling the blogger because Tamara attacked her, even though the blogger attacked her first. So basically, Katie reached out to the blogger to console her because Tamara responded. So then Tamara says, "I caught her in a lie." They show a flashback of 5 days before. And Tamara was saying, "You reached out to console her." Katie says, "She reached out to me, by the way." Tamara said she put it out there that you called her. And then Tamara picks up her phone and I am so sorry. I think it's the Bravo babe, maybe. That's who it might be. So Tamara has her phone and the Bravo babe, had put it out on social media that Katie had reached out to her, da da da. So Tamara's like, she's saying you reached out to her. Like, it's right here. So Katie is listening to it and she's flabbergasted. She denies calling the blogger. She said, "I don't know her number and I don't even remember her name." So Katie says, "I'm going to go home and I'm going to figure it out. I'll search through my DMs." So right in that moment, I thought, why can't you pick up your phone right there and do it? Say, "Hold on. Did you think it was going to be boring screen time? Like, would that be her excuse? Like, well, I didn't want to be sitting at taping and doing it. Like, what was the reason for you not doing it right then? So Emily says in the scene, she's such a liar. And Heather says, why is she trying to hurt everyone? In her confessional, Tamra says, look, when people are hurt, when they have had trauma, they may do things to other people. So her reaching out to bloggers and them showing her love, maybe she likes the feeling of that, which is interesting because Jen says something similar, who's Katie's friend down the road. She said, now there are some people that are just evil. So they would spread the stories for just being evil, but she doesn't believe that Katie is evil. So it's got to be something else. So in the scene, Tamara says she's got an excuse for everything. And Emily said, well, and then Emily goes on to tell them, Jen, even though Jen is good friends with Katie, Jen said that Katie's stories don't add up. So then Heather, she jumps right on that boy. I thought they were best friends. So why is she saying that? Emily said, well, she also said that she was a con artist. Heather said, she told you that? Emily said she told Gina. They show a flashback to Gina and Jen and Shannon on the beach. And Gina is saying to Jen, you used the word con artist. Jen says, I did. So Shannon's like, about who? So we have Gina telling Jen, you use the word con artist. And we know why Gina's bringing it up like that. Because the conversation I think that Jen and Gina had was off camera. So now Gina's bringing it on camera and she's reminding her, hey, you said the word con artist. And Jen is very clear to not, she was like, I said that? Wow, that was mean if I did. She doesn't even know. No, she says, that's terrible. Like, oh, I use that word. Oh, that's terrible. So Heather said, does Katie know that? Back in the scene at the restaurant, does Katie know that Jen is saying these things about her? Emily said, I don't know, but I'll be happy to tell her. When you like, you running around here thinking this is your friend. That ain't even your friend for real. So Tamara says Jen has a habit of telling people what they want to hear. Then they bring up the wedding and all that. And she's saying Jen is sending out save the dates. And then they joke about Tamara being invited and possibly being a bridesmaid. Katie, Gina, and Emily meet up. Katie gets to the place first. And then Gina and Emily are riding together. Gina did not tell Katie that Emily was coming. She didn't want Katie to have time to have a prepared statement, if you will, or maybe delete any incriminating evidence. I don't know. I felt a kind of way about that. I understood it in a way, like, yeah, she may have come on prepared, but then also like, you is really setting her up like that. But on the ride there, Emily and Gina are talking, and Emily says, Gina, you're going to have to talk because I have to get my thoughts together. She breaks down and says, this is really hard on me. I have to tell you something. Luke may have autism. The therapist for Luke told them that the eating disorder is very common with autism. So he's got to go to a specialist and get really intensive testing. And she said that she feels bad because as a mom, she ignored his texture issues. So Gina said, listen, don't. I felt the same way when her daughter Sienna was diagnosed with sound and sensory issues. And it was a teacher that had to point it out to her. She felt so bad. So she comforts Emily. They arrive. Katie looks up from her phone and says, you could see on her face, like, oh, she's like, hi. So in her confessional, Katie says, like, this is an ambush. She had no idea that Emily was coming. So then again, Gina confirms in the confessional, I want her to try to prepare. I want her to know and be able to erase any evidence or whatever. So maybe we'll get the truth. The truth is so freeing. So Katie asks how they're all doing. Gina said she's good, but Emily has probably felt better. That to me is annoying. To me, it's like we are adults. I do feel like Emily can be childish at times, even though, but this is a serious matter. I get that. But when she's like, how are y'all doing? I feel like Emily could have said, not well. I could be doing better, but all this stuff you're da da da. But instead, just sitting there letting Gina speak for her. And she did that, what was that, the season before last when they stayed at Emily Vargas's house and she was upset with Heather, or she was upset with Gina and wouldn't talk to Gina while Gina was at the table and they're trying to eat, like, and she's looking all, so she's like, just say something. But anyway, so Gina said, she's feeling a lot after everything that happened last year. Oh, Gina says Gina herself is feeling a lot of things and that she lost trust with Katie last year. She said, I know that you reached out to me. So I picked up the phone and I called your best friend, Jen, and we had a couple of conversations. And I was like, now where did that, like, I get you want her to know your best friend even feels this way about you. So I'm validated. But I still felt like Gina pulled that from, like, let me just pull that out of nowhere. But she said, I had a couple conversations with your friend Jen. Jen was questioning your motive and your behavior. And she even used the word con artist about you in a conversation. That's not my word. That's Jen's word. So in a confessional, Katie says, I don't believe for GD's second that Katie used the word con artist. She said, if Jen felt like I was a con artist, she wouldn't talk to me. I talked to that girl 10 times a day. So back in the scene, Katie said, I just remember you saying we have to move on, but we all talk about each other. Gina said, that's fine, but we don't all talk to these people like bloggers. And Katie says, you're saying this, Emily, because of your ex nanny who came to me? Emily says, yes. Katie said, I should have just ignored her. You're right. But I was pissed. So Emily says, that's not an excuse, Katie. You're pissed at me, then you deal with me. You don't think I've gone to a reunion and been pissed? For 2 years, I had to deal with people coming after my husband and my marriage. So they're kind of going back and forth. Emily's like, you just deal with it. You just deal with it. And Katie's like, yeah, you had 2 years. Like, you've had years. This was my first one. This was my first reunion. I didn't know. You came at me at the reunion about my kids, about my custody thing. So now I'm being retaliatory, right? So Emily's like, at the end of the day, we've all been through it, but I didn't retaliate by bringing somebody's kids into it. I didn't do that because I have boundaries and you don't. Don't bring my kids into it. Do you understand that? So Emily's yelling. Katie said, I understand. And Emily says, well, then why did you do it? Katie said, somebody calling somebody mean, meaning your kids called, she said, somebody calling somebody mean. What she was saying is basically me telling the world, or me having my daughter tell the world that your kids called Heather mean is totally different than you bringing up my legal custody issues at the reunion, period. In Emily's confessional, she says, I thought we were on the same page, but my kids are now pawns in this game. So Katie says, Emily broke the pact at the reunion, talking about my children. So, and that's where I want to say again, so what do y'all think? We knew that Katie's daughter, Kylie, said what she said on camera. It got back to Heather. Emily denied it. At a party, Emily and Katie agreed to squash it and move forward. But then at the reunion, Emily brought up Katie's custody. Do you think Emily was out of line for doing that because her and Katie had already talked and squashed it during the season? So did it feel like her bringing it up at the reunion wasn't a response because they had already dealt with it? Y'all let me know. So Emily said, oh, Emily said, I said what I said to your face. Gina said, you could apologize. So then Gina says to Emily, look, you can apologize for going into her past. So Katie says, so Emily does. Katie says, I appreciate it. I'm sorry it went down the way it did. I was pissed. Emily says, I appreciate your apology, but I don't have any interest basically in forming anything with you right now. Katie says, okay. So in her confessional, Gina says, at the end of the day, Emily's not just going to jump back in a relationship with Katie and be like, oh, I trust you, but at least it's progress. Katie gets up. She says she got to go. She hugs Gina. She goes to hug Emily. Emily says, now I'm good. Gina's back in her confessional. It's like, or maybe not. Maybe it's not going in a good direction. Child, then they stuff the donuts in their coat pockets. The Laverne and Shirley, Lucy and Ethel antics, to me, they fall flat, but maybe some people like them. So the ladies are all getting ready to go to the Golden Door. Jen tells her daughter that Shannon told me Oprah goes here. Her daughter doesn't know who Oprah is. Millennials, millennials. So Emily is showing up trying on outfits. And first, should I do the red? Her daughter's like, So then she puts on another outfit, and her daughter is like, millennials are cringing. You're acting like one. So they're all just talking with their families or spouses or whatever. Like, hope it's going to be a good day. So we go to Shannon. Shannon's putting together gift bags for everybody. And she's like, look, I invited all the girls, but just because I hugged Tamara at the reunion doesn't negate all the attacks last year. She said her intent in inviting Tamara was not so that they can heal their friendship, but that so Tamara can heal herself. So Tamara is home. This scene got me, y'all. Tamara is telling Eddie she's nervous about going because she's not going to beg for anybody's friendship, but she's nervous because she doesn't understand how Shannon can just throw away friendship like that. Did you watch last season? And the way that you dog walked her about her drinking for almost every episode, trying to say it was under the guise of actually caring about her and you wanted her to wake up. Girl, get out of my face, Junior Jesus Jugs. Stop it, girl. So in her confessional, she says she gets sad because they're not friends anymore. And then she tries to rustle up some tears and says Shannon betrayed her in the worst way. She hasn't had a chance to talk to Shannon yet, you but how could you get close to anybody, especially Shannon, that'll just turn on you like that? Child, she acting like Shannon then turned on her in a dime. Now I know that there was talk that when Tamara got fired or her contract not renewed, some seasons ago, that Tamara said she was reaching out to her and Shannon wasn't calling her back because she was no longer on the show. I don't know. But this dog walking you did, I can see Tamara having that issue with her. 2 seasons ago when Tamara first got back? They hashed through it. But now with her drinking, it was like, girl, come on. So she tells Eddie, I just don't understand how she could be so heartless. Eddie says, have you met her? She's not a real friend. I said, I know you lying. Tamara's crying about the closeness being gone when earlier in the episode you told the therapist you can't get close to anybody and that's why you are the way you are. But anyway, Shannon gets to the golden door. She said there's something magical about the place. Child, for $12,950 for 8 days, it better be more than magical. I better get peace, healing, happiness, spontaneous orgasms. Like what? 12? Girl. Okay. The ladies are arriving one at a time. Tamara arrives and Gina says, why do you look like you're down? Is it because of Teddy? So Shannon goes, how's she doing? So Tamara says it's not good. In her confessional, she says, Teddy found out she had multiple brain tumors and was in ICU. So y'all remember when that came out. She says, I'm a shell of a person right now, and I can't imagine my life without my best friend. I got to put on a brave face, and it's not easy. Now, I'm not discounting Tamara's pain because I know if it was one of my best friends going through that, child, I would want to be by her bedside, in the bed, curled up with her, just holding her, right? So I definitely understand all that. But it's just, again, that's your best friend, these feelings, but you told the therapist you have a hard time getting close to people. And maybe, you know what? Giving her the benefit of the doubt, her and Teddy have had some years to build. So there's that. But I still prayers up for Teddy. I know that she is dealing with this and going through it. So I pray that she comes out on the other side of this for herself, for her kids, for all of that. So in her confessional, Shannon says, man, I feel horrible for Teddy. I had intended to talk to Tamara about our friendship, but she don't feel like I can't dump that on her now when she's dealing with this with Teddy. So in my mind, I said, I'm going to be honest. I think if the shoe was on the other foot and it was Shannon dealing with a friend like that and Tamara had issues, I don't think that Tamara would cut her any slack. I think maybe in the beginning, getting there, she would do like what Shannon did and say it in her confessional, but Tamara would end up saying something. Based on her track record, I think she would say something. So I said Tamara would probably be like, oh, how many vodkas have you had trying to cope with your friend being sick? I can literally see her doing that. But anyway, so I appreciate the route that Shannon is going, though. You know what? I'm gonna let it be because she's dealing with something. So Katie and Jen arrive together. As much as Katie is not my cup of tea, I felt like, can you imagine, like being in that position? You have an issue with everybody. Now, here's the thing: if it's the issue that you created, it still doesn't make it any less awkward, right? When you know these people don't even really like me like that, and the person I'm arriving with, one of y'all didn't told me that she didn't said I was a con artist, so it feels like. And even though her and Shannon are good, Shannon still said, "Girl, you were wrong." So it's like, you know. So they get there. They're coming down, and Shannon says, "Listen, I come to the Golden Door to get clarity." So she thought the group could maybe get some clarity of their own, heal their, hash out their issues, heal and move on. So Gina said, "I'm telling you, I don't trust this girl." And Emily said, "Yeah, behind closed doors, she tries to damage us." So they're saying this as Katie and Jen are walking down. Emily Chowder made a list of the things that Katie lied about. So let's see. She has the paparazzi photo, lied to Heather about snubbing you at a party, lied and said you own your home in San Diego. You reached out to Gina under false pretenses that you were buying a home in Newport, but you just wanted to infiltrate this group of friends. Pause, and I'm pausing Emily's list real quick. I didn't realize that because Gina was a realtor, she reached out to her to say that she wanted to buy a home, but I guess she really wasn't. She just wanted to become friends with Gina to get on the show. Wow, if that's true. Then let's get back into the list. You repeatedly lie about conversations you had with Gina, where you claim Gina talked badly about Heather. You and your daughter both lied about my boys, and then in parentheses, kids are off limits. After the weekend that Kylie babysat, you and I had responsible conversation and both agreed to establish boundary at Jen's party. Your agreement to abide by my boundaries was a lie. Your daughter lies about me on a podcast. You received a defamatory and gross DM about my children, and you received photos of my minor children who were 6 and 8 years old at the time. Then you disseminated photos of my minor children to those podcast bottom feeding bitches to publicly publish lies. Your own best friend says she doesn't trust you and your stories don't add up. And then number 10, your daughter makes the family group. Your daughter makes a family group chat, I think, talking about us. I didn't catch 11 and 12. But I want to go back to where she says, you and I had responsible conversation and both agreed to establish boundary at Jen's party. Right. But then at the reunion, Emily brought up her custody issues. So that's where it's like, so was Emily just responding? But they had already made peace about Kylie saying the things she said, referencing Emily's kids and what they said about Heather. So it's like, Gina says to Shannon, "You think this place is going to fix her?" Again, Katie and Jen are still walking down. I said, "Well, how long is the walk?" She said, "You think this place is going to fix her? Is there a baptism? Because we might need to dunk the girl." In her confessional, Heather says, "I don't feel vindicated by Katie's behavior and people seeing Katie's behavior. I feel slightly annoyed that no one took heed to what I said about Katie." She said, "When I have a bad feeling about somebody, I'm never wrong." So then Gina says, "This is uncomfortable." So they're all there together. Shannon tells them, listen, she's really happy that they're all there. She knows that they've had issues. When she comes and when she leaves in such a healed space, and that's her intention for the group. So some of the ladies break off into drumming. Some of the ladies did Tai Chi. So the little drummer girls were Katie, Emily, Jen, and Shannon. Gina, Tamara, and Heather go to the yoga studio to do Tai Chi. In her confessional, Emily says Shannon keeps saying the golden doors are about healing. Well, then why isn't she doing Tai Chi with Tamara? Because that's a major healing that needs to happen. That was a good point because she put Katie and Emily together. Just saying. But I guess let's go back to what Shannon said. She didn't want to discuss her issues with Tamara about their friendship because what Tamara's going through dealing with her friend Teddy being in the hospital. So Emily says that Shannon is really good at playing the drums. So then after the Tai Chi, I said Tara, Tamara, Gina, and Heather are all talking, and they bring up Jen. So then Tamara asks, "What is Jen angry about?" Because I said, "How's the FBI doing?" Yeah, I would think so. Heather said, what happened since the reunion? Because, they kind of talked it out, the reunion. Tamara says, other than them constantly going after me on social media. In her confessional, she says, I can't say anything because Ryan's going to sue me. In her confessional, Jen says, do I take an occasional jab on social media? Yeah. Then Tamara says, I live rent free in Jen's head. I don't agree with that. I think they're fed up with all of these things that you've said about them. And now they're just boom, 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 bang, 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 bang. Y'all remember that from Empire? If you're an old school Empire watcher, you know. But I don't believe that Jen is just sitting around thinking about Tamra for nothing. You've given them plenty of reason. So she said, Jen is talking to Katie about Tamra, the whole Tamra situation. And all the ladies are hearing it, right? And she says, I know now that she's a tyrant and we're a happy couple. So they show the videos of Tamra and Eddie walking the streets where Tamra had to walk back accusing Ryan of like Ryan stole more, we made more money with our Vina company than Ryan stole. And Ryan sent her a cease and desist, took a picture of it. So then her and Eddie are walking the streets of New York and she has to make a video saying that's not what she meant to say. What she meant to say, the money that was stolen, not accusing Ryan of it. Because remember, Jim Bellino, Alexis's ex, sued Tamara and Shannon for saying something defamatory on a podcast. So, like, girl, you should have learned your lesson having to pay all these lawyer fees and all that for that, whatever. But so Emily said, to Jen, she said, are you talking about the cease and desist? And she said, it gets murky because he took a picture of it and then collaborated with people on two podcasts. I feel like that was messed up on that side. I'm sorry. I can say, if you come at me, say all these defamatory things about me that could really hurt me, if I decide to send you a cease and desist and then go on a podcast and talk about me sending you a cease and desist in response to the things you keep saying about me, I can do that. I can most certainly do that. Period. So Jen said, I didn't care at that point. And I said, I know that's right, Jen. She said, so the ladies were talking to the other ladies about how everything was, their different things that they did, activity. Gina was being funny and said in her confessional, look, Shannon had crystals in her wall. So she's very used to paying for things that don't work. I mean, that don't do anything. So they asked the little drummer girls how drummer was. Heather says to Emily, did you feel calming after? Emily says, yeah, like maybe I only wanted to kill two people. So Heather's like, that's progress. So Katie says, and this, y'all, my butt was cringing with the way everybody's response to her. Katie says, I want to say I'm going to host the lunch on Friday. This year, I haven't really gotten to know everyone. So there's a lot that's kind of clouded us trying to get to know each other. So I wanted to see if you would join me for a hot pot. So Gina said, oh, like an olive branch? Katie said, yeah. So I would love it if you would join me. So Jen says, I'll be there. I'm excited. So Katie says, thanks, Jen. You could tell she's like relieved. Katie says, it'll be good. And then in her confessional, she explains what a hot pot is. She said, in the Asian culture, hot pot is where everyone comes around the table and it's where you share. You have community and you just talk and share and love. It's where everyone feels at home. In her confessional, Gina says, I want to know less about you, Katie. And that's the problem, child. Who so at the table, Gina said the problem is that the things that are happening in this group. It feels like you're trying to hurt all of us. And then Heather says, you got to stop with the bloggers. Jen said the difference for me is that I've actually taken time to get to know Katie. Gina interrupts her and says, but you still concluded that you're concerned and about some of the things that you're hearing from her. So basically, even though you've taken the time to get to know her, girl, you still don't know if she and the truth have a cohesive relationship. Katie said, I asked Jen if she called me a con artist, and she said she never said that. So they show a flashback. Jen didn't say she never said that. And I wonder if this is when they were on their way to the spa. They show a flashback. Katie and Jen are in the car, and Jen says, Gina did tell me that I called you a con art. Gina did tell me that I said that because Katie brings it up. They said you called me a con artist. And Jen was honest, and I appreciate that. Jen didn't say I never said that. Jen said, Gina did tell me I said that. And I was like, wow, that wasn't very nice. She said, I don't know. So Jen is like, I don't even remember if I said that. So Katie's like, it's manipulation. Either way, I know that Katie likes Jen, but what I also need Katie to kind of self-reflect on is this person that I've really gotten to know has questions about whether or not I'm truthful. So that would be concerning to me. Like, what have I done to make you think that one of the things I've said? Because they haven't discussed that yet, and maybe they will later in the season. This is episode 1, but that should be more concerning to Katie, right? So at the table, Jen says, I don't really know if I used that word about you. I don't know. But in her confessional, Jen said, things with Katie don't always add up, but it's not catastrophic. I was like, wow. She also makes mention that basically bloggers need to be blocked, right? She said, so they're back in the car. And Katie says, I was invited to one of their birthday parties last week, like one of the bloggers' birthday parties last week. I think that's who she's talking about. And Jen starts laughing. So in her confessional, JD says, when I ask question, Jen says, when I ask Katie questions, she gives me the answer. And she just goes with the answer that Katie gives her. And that's that. They're back in the car. Katie says, how do you know? How do you know the bloggers, what have you? And she says they have mutual people. But Jen made a point about Katie, and she said maybe Katie feels like basically to her, they're not bloggers, they're her friends. And remember, Tamara did say that earlier. Back at the table, Jen says, so what does it matter? What does it matter? Does it affect to Gina? Does it affect you and Travis? Does it affect me and Ryan? What does it matter if she talks to these people? So Emily says, I had to hire an attorney to sue the nanny. I have to send her, what was it? She had to send her a suit or something, child, because my note said season. I know that ain't what she said. But basically, she had to send her something for invasion of privacy and defamation. And I have to pay the attorney who's very expensive. Jen said, I get that. Emily said, if you had ignored it, meaning ignored the ex nanny reaching out, I wouldn't have to be dealing with this, Katie. So how am I supposed to be meeting with my attorney and then go sit and have a conversation and be like, oh, I want to get to know more about your life? I do see what Emily's saying. My ex nanny reached out to you. Instead of you just ignoring the message completely or saying, look, I don't have nothing to do with that. I ain't got nothing for you, man. You direct her to a podcast. So she goes on the podcast, says all these things. And now I have to send an attorney. I have to hire an attorney to get her to shut up. And now you want me to sit at a table with you and want to learn more about you? I don't think so. I'm not interested in that at all. So Shannon says, I'm uncomfortable when I see a bunch of people going after one person. And all the ladies are like, no, we're not going after anyone. They're just bringing their issues to her. Heather said, at the reunion, it was very clear. No more digging up information. We all have to come from a good place. And that can't happen anymore. But then it happened again. So Tamara says, this girl was on social media. She said that you and Matt, Katie's husband, called her. Katie said she DM'd me first. She was always saying kind things that I hearted, but I never called her. In her confessional, though, let me see, but I never called her. In Katie's confessional, the producer says, why would the blogger lie and say that you called her if you didn't? Katie said, bloggers, that's how they make money. It's like clickbait. Now, she has come out and released the call, child, I believe. So in the scene, Katie said, I told Tamara that I'm going to prove it to her, that I need to go and look through my DMs. Gina said, well, look now. And Shannon was like, you know how Shannon gets frazzled. Because I get why Gina said it at first. You're telling us, I told Tamara I'm going to prove it to her. Look, well, look now. Mind you, she could have also looked at home and then screenshot it to Tamara, but maybe she wants to show her in person. So Gina says, look now. Katie says, oh, this is unreal. Well, no, I agree with Gina at that moment. Look now. So Gina said, you can clear up the truth right now for yourself. But Katie says her phone said SOS and she had no service. In her confessional, Heather says, well, that's convenient. Katie then holds up her phone and shows them, I don't have any service. I'm out of service. In her confessional, Tamara says she'd be climbing a tree to get reception. And be up there. Oh, she said she'd be up there showing, like, look, guys, I have no connection. Shannon said, look, after spending 8 days here, I had to use a landline. I just thought it was funny how when they all be going like back and forth, and then a housewife will like say a line like that, which kind of just like under the radar. She's like, after spending 8 days here, I had to use a landline. So but they're telling her to go on Wi-Fi. And then Shannon's like, no, you guys, there is zero service here. So this is when I was getting a little bit annoyed. And I'm like, is something happening? Are they cutting pieces together? Because if Katie says, I told Tamara, I'm gonna prove to her, I'm gonna show her the DMs. Gina says, do it now. I'm showing you. My phone says SOS. I actually have no service at all, and they could see it. Shannon says, look, I spent 8 days here, paid the 12 G's to stay here for 8 days. I had to use a landline. The Wi Fi is not good here. Why didn't they leave it alone then? And say, all right, soon as we get back, either somebody say, I have a hotspot. Let's see if we can use that. Or, all right, but you need to show it to her as soon as y'all cross over in the territory with good Wi-Fi together. Like, I'm wondering why they just kept going on and on. If Shannon co-signed the fact I was here for 8 days, there is no service, and they're looking at Katie's phone showing showing SOS. I get wanting her to show it, and if there was service, I'm with them. Show it. Show it now. What are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? But if she can't show it, then she can't show it, right? Gina said, I couldn't get my phone out quicker if I was telling the truth. It could be cleared up in 5 seconds if you pulled out your phone. So then Katie says, this is between me and Tamara. And so then Gina says to Tamara, she wants to go back and get rid of it then. Katie said, no, I don't. Tamara says, you should pull it up, Katie. Again, I'm confused because she said she had no service. Y'all saw her phone say no service. So why are we still saying to her to telling her to pull it up? So Gina said, now it looks bad, Katie. Katie saying again, I have zero service. And Gina says she just doesn't want to do it. And the episode ends. It was a good premiere episode for me. I enjoyed it. Y'all let me know. That part really did irritate me though, because it's like, girl, she's showing you she don't have service. But Katie seems to have gotten herself in a little pickle, in a little bind. So I need y'all to let me know what y'all thought of the episode. Did y'all enjoy the premiere episode? Do y'all think that they're ganging up on Katie unnecessarily? And with the whole we have a pact about not talking about kids thing, Katie's daughter, Kylie, brought it up about what Emily's sons, are they twins? I was calling them twins, but are they twins? What they supposedly said. They squash it at Jen's engagement party, but then at the reunion, Emily brings up her custody issue. So do you think then that was fair game for Katie because they had made a truce about it? Do you think Emily's the one that broke the pact because she brought up her custody issues at the reunion? Y'all let me know what y'all think. I love y'all so much. I will be getting Atlanta done today and we'll be uploading it tonight. I love y'all. Oh, y'all, I've been off since Friday. I'm getting ready to get on back out here. Talk to you later. Pray for your girl. See ya. Oh, y'all, please don't forget to make sure that you're subscribed to the channel if you want to be. I know they say YouTube has a habit of unsubscribing people, so just make sure and check if you were subscribed and want to be subscribed that you're still subscribed. All right. Talk to you later. See ya.